She didn't even look at me when she said it. "You'll never be on our level." A few people laughed. Quietly. Like it wasn't meant to hurt, but it did anyway. I kept eating. Someone asked her what she meant. She smiled. Took a sip. Then said it again, slower this time. "Some people just don't belong in certain rooms." No one corrected her. No one stopped her. And no one looked at me. That's when I realized something was very wrong. I'm not the kind of person who reacts in public. I've always preferred quiet work. Structured days. Clear outcomes. At that point, I was working long hours. Not impressive on the surface. No big titles. No flashy office. Just numbers, contracts, and decisions that stayed behind closed doors. Most people in my family didn't understand what I did. That included my sister. She was louder. More visible. Social media, events, connections. She had the kind of success that people could see. The kind that got attention. And attention, in our family, was everything. At first, her comments felt like normal sibling behavior. Small things. "You still doing that back-end stuff? You should try something more visible." You know, real success doesn't hide. It didn't feel like an attack. Just dismissal. I ignored it. I focused on work. But then it started showing up in other places. Family dinners became different. Conversations would shift when I spoke. People would interrupt more. Or worse, smile, nod, and then move on like I hadn't said anything at all. My parents didn't correct it. If anything, they reinforced it. "She's just more driven," my mother said once. "She knows how to build relationships," my father added. I didn't argue. Because arguing would have required explaining things I wasn't ready to explain. And more importantly, it would have exposed things I wasn't ready to expose. Still, something felt off. Not just the comments. The timing. The confidence behind them. It wasn't random. It felt informed. Like she knew something. Or thought she did. That dinner, the one where she said I didn't belong, that wasn't spontaneous. It was prepared. Rehearsed, even. I noticed it in the way she paused before speaking. In the way she looked around the table first. Measuring reactions. Building support. That's not something people do unless they feel safe. Unless they believe they have leverage. That's when I started paying attention. Not just to what she said, but to what she did. Her calls increased. Late at night, she would step outside to take them. Or lower her voice when I walked into the room. Once, I passed by her door and heard my name. Followed by silence. Then a quick laugh. Another time, I saw a document open on her laptop. Just for a second. But I recognized the structure. It looked like a financial summary. Not her style. Not her work. When she noticed me, she closed it immediately. Too quickly. That's when the feeling changed. From discomfort to awareness. I didn't confront her. Didn't ask questions. Didn't react. Because reactions give people time to adjust. To hide things better. To clean up. And whatever this was, it wasn't clean. It was building. Quietly. And I had a feeling. If I moved too early, I'd lose the only advantage I had. So I stepped back. I listened more. Watched patterns. Tracked behavior. And slowly, very slowly, a picture started forming. One that didn't make sense at first. Until it did. So I stopped reacting. And I started watching. The first real piece of evidence didn't come from her. It came from a routine audit. One of my firms had flagged a discrepancy. Minor at first glance. A timing issue between reported holdings and executed transactions. Nothing unusual on paper. But the pattern didn't sit right. So I looked deeper. Cross-referenced accounts. Checked access logs. Pulled communication timestamps. And then I saw it. A familiar email address. Not hers. But connected to her. An assistant she had hired 6 months earlier. The same period when her tone had started changing. At first, I assumed coincidence. Until I pulled the attachment history. Several documents had been opened, copied, accessed outside normal hours. The files weren't public. They were internal summaries, acquisition timelines, valuation models, the kind of material that doesn't circulate casually, the kind that, if misunderstood, could be twisted into something else. I didn't react. I just kept going. Pulled device logs, matched IP addresses, then location data. The access points traced back to a private network. One I recognized. Her apartment. That was the first confirmation. But not the last. I requested silent monitoring on the account. No alerts. No flags. Just observation. Within 48 hours, I had more. Downloads. Screenshots. Partial exports. Nothing complete. Just fragments. Enough to suggest intent. Not enough to prove it. Then came the recording. It wasn't planned. It came from a compliance call. One of the external partners had logged a routine conversation for documentation. I almost skipped it. But something made me open it. The voice was hers. Clear. Confident. She wasn't asking questions. She was presenting information. My information. Out of context. Adjusted. Simplified. He's not actually leading the deal, she said. He just handles the back-end modeling. The real decisions come from higher up. A pause. Then she continued. But I have access to the structure. I can give you an early view before things move. Another pause. Positioning early could be very profitable. No hesitation. No uncertainty. Just certainty. Like she believed it. Or needed others to believe it. I listened to the entire call. Twice. Then I pulled the transcript. Saved it. Archived it. Cross-checked timestamps with the document access logs. They matched. Perfectly. That's when it became clear. This wasn't casual. It wasn't curiosity. It was intentional. She was using partial information to build influence. To elevate herself. To create the appearance of access. At my expense. And the people she was speaking to. They weren't random. They were connected. Funds. Advisors. Individuals who moved quickly when they thought they had an edge. If they acted on what she was sharing, they could distort the deal. Trigger premature movement. Or worse. Force exposure before we were ready. It wasn't just about reputation anymore. It was risk. Real risk. Financial. Legal. Structural. I didn't confront her. Didn't mention the audit. Didn't acknowledge the recording. Because the moment she knew, everything would disappear. Accounts closed. Devices wiped. Stories adjusted. And I needed everything intact. Every file. Every timestamp. Every word. So I kept collecting. Quietly. Systematically. Until there was no room for interpretation. Only facts. Only sequence. Only truth. Confronting them would have ruined everything. I didn't rush. That was the only rule I gave myself. No sudden moves. No visible changes. Everything stayed the same on the surface. Same routines. Same silence at dinner. Same neutral responses when she made her comments. But underneath, everything shifted. I secured the data first. Every document she accessed. Every timestamp. Every exported file. I made 3 copies. One offline. One with legal encryption. One held by a third party. Nothing could be deleted now. Nothing could be rewritten. Then I mapped the pattern. Dates of access. Calls she made afterward. Who she spoke to. Which firms received what version of the information. It wasn't random. She had built a rhythm. Access call follow-up message. Always within hours. Sometimes minutes. That told me something important. She wasn't analyzing the data. She was relaying it. Positioning herself as a source. Someone close enough to the deal to sound credible. but not close enough to understand the consequences. That's where the risk lived. And that's where I needed to act carefully. I contacted legal next. Not loudly. Not officially. Just a private consultation with someone who specialized in corporate misuse and information breach. I didn't send everything at once. Just enough to establish context. Access logs. The recording transcript. A timeline. They didn't interrupt me. Didn't react much either. Just asked for one thing at the end. Can you prove continuity? I knew what that meant. Not a single incident. A chain. Something that showed it wasn't accidental. So I gave them the rest. The repeated access. The mirrored calls. The consistent pattern over weeks. When they finished reviewing it, the response was simple. This is actionable. No emotion. No exaggeration. Just confirmation. From that point, everything became structured. A formal record was built. But it wasn't filed yet. That mattered. Because filing too early would trigger alerts. And alerts would give her time. Time to adjust. Time to disappear. Instead, we prepared. Quietly. A controlled sequence. Preserve. Verify. Then contain. I also reached out to one external party. Not all of them. Just one. A firm she had spoken to more than once. I didn't accuse. Didn't explain. I just requested a compliance verification meeting. Routine language. Nothing alarming. They agreed. Set a date. 2 days later. Meanwhile, nothing changed at home. She was still confident. Still making comments. Still speaking like she had something I didn't. At dinner, she mentioned a big move she was anticipating. Didn't say details. Just smiled. Like she was already ahead. My parents nodded. Proud. Impressed. I said nothing. Because by then, everything she thought she controlled was already documented. Every version of her story, already compared to the original. And every person she tried to influence was already part of the record. The morning of the meeting, I left early. Same as always. No announcement. No tension. Just routine. But this time, I carried something different. Not a plan. Not an argument. Just a complete sequence. Clean. Verifiable. Unavoidable. The room was already set when I arrived. Legal was present. Compliance was present. And so was the firm she had been speaking to. They greeted me normally. No suspicion. No idea. Because from their perspective, this was just another check. Another standard review. And that's exactly what I needed it to be. Normal. Until it wasn't. Back at home, she sent a message around noon. Big week. You'll probably hear about it soon. I didn't reply. Because by that time, they were already listening to the recording. Already comparing timestamps. Already asking the first questions. Calmly. Precisely. And for the first time, the version of the story she had built was starting to collapse under its own weight. They thought it was just another day. It wasn't. No one raised their voice in that room. That's what I remember most. There was no confrontation in the way people expect it. No accusations. No sudden reactions. Just quiet questions. The recording played once. Then again. No commentary. Just pauses at certain points. A timestamp here. A phrase there. Then the documents were placed side by side. Original versions. And the fragments she had accessed. You could see the difference immediately. What was left out? What was simplified? What was presented as fact, without context? No one needed to explain it. It explained itself. Compliance asked the first direct question. Who authorized this access? No one answered. Because the logs already had. They moved to the next. Were these materials shared externally with intent to influence position? Another pause. No one rushed to fill it. They didn't need to. The pattern was already mapped. Access. Call. Follow-up. Repeated. Consistent. Deliberate. Legal didn't accuse her directly. They didn't say her name. They just outlined exposure, breach of confidentiality, misrepresentation, market interference. Each word placed carefully, not loud, but final. The firm she had been speaking to stayed quiet. You could see it on their faces. Not anger. Not even surprise. Just calculation. Adjusting their position in real time. Understanding what they had almost acted on. And what it could have cost them. The meeting didn't last long after that. Because once everything is clear, there's nothing left to argue. They moved into process. Formal notices. Internal escalation. External reporting. Everything structured. Everything documented. Still no raised voices. Just decisions. I didn't stay for the entire closing. There was nothing left for me to add. My part had already been done. Evidence presented. Sequence confirmed. Risk contained. I left quietly. Like I had arrived. No calls. No messages. No explanation. When I got home, everything felt normal. Too normal. She was in the living room. On her phone. Smiling. My parents were nearby. Talking about something small. Routine. Unaware. Or maybe, not yet aware. She looked up when I walked in. Long day, she asked. I nodded. Set my keys down. No tension in my voice. No more than usual. She studied me for a second. Like she was trying to read something. But there was nothing to read. Because I hadn't changed anything. That was the point. The first call came that evening. Not to me. To her. I didn't hear what was said. But I heard the shift. The silence between words. The way her tone dropped. Then sharpened. Then went quiet again. My parents noticed. Of course they did. They asked what was wrong. She didn't answer right away. Then came the second call. Shorter. More direct. This time, no attempt to sound calm. Just listening. Then a single sentence. I understand. After that, she didn't speak much. The confidence was gone. Not dramatically. Not suddenly. Just, absent. Like something had been removed. And without it, there was nothing to hold the posture together. Over the next few days, things changed. Not publicly. Not loudly. But structurally. Her access was revoked. Quietly. Her connections distanced themselves. Not openly. Just slower responses. Delayed replies. Then none at all. And eventually, silence. No announcement. No explanation at family dinners. Just a shift in how people spoke. More careful. More neutral. My parents stopped comparing. Stopped making comments. Not because they understood everything, but because they understood enough. One evening, she tried to bring it up. Indirectly. Said something about miscommunication. About people overreacting. I didn't argue. Didn't correct her. Just listened. Because the truth didn't need reinforcement. It was already in motion. Already recorded. Already processed. Weeks later, everything settled. The deal moved forward. Clean. Untouched by what almost disrupted it. And everything she had tried to build. Based on fragments. On borrowed access. On controlled narratives. It faded. Quietly. Without spectacle. Without closure. Just, gone. That night, everything was quiet.